Entitled college roommates were mad I didn't cook for them, and they wanted me to pay for the ingredients. I refused, and they threw my stuff in the trash. I debated telling this last story after the whole saga with my MIL and ex-wife, but I mentioned it before so many times that I may as well tell it. But it'll probably be my last post here. I know it seems I dealt with a lot of terrible people in my life. I suppose I was just a magnet for it. My terrible mother, my terrible ex-wife, my terrible MIL, passed away before becoming ex-MIL, bad coworker that gave out my phone number to my mother, and lastly some bad roommates from my college days. But beyond all that, I haven't really dealt with much anyone else of note. I've got good friends, a good job, and I'm physically active. But there were times I was just drawing in narcissists. Hopefully no more. Back in college, I had to deal with 3 bad roommate guys for 6 months. It was community college, so no dorm. Just a rundown apartment that looked right out of the 80s. I was balancing school and part-time work, so didn't have a lot of money. Funny thing is, I was literally the only one there who knew anything about cooking, much less did dishes. I wasn't one of those hardcore couponers. And there was really only 2 good stores in walking/biking distance. One a typical supermarket, the other a small discount food store. That's where I went the most. I was also no stranger to the local thrift store. My roommates mostly ate junk food or whatever else they could grab that was already made. So for obvious reasons, I couldn't keep leftovers. We also had fights about them not doing their share of cleaning. But that was resolved later as well. 2 of these guys said they were friends before college, and the 3rd roommate fit right in with them for a while. The drama over the food first started when I made myself an egg sandwich for breakfast. 2 eggs over easy or medium, with your choice of cheese, bread, and mayo. It's actually pretty good, and a solid breakfast. One of my roommates saw me eating it, and asked for one too. I apologetically said no, because I was on a tight food budget, and the frying pan was already in the sink. He rolled his eyes at me and groaned. I told him they were easy to make them himself if he bought the ingredients. But he balked at the notion. Another day, I made mashed soft-boiled eggs for breakfast. That attracted more attention. It's eggs boiled just enough to where the whites are cooked, but the yolk is still liquid. You then peel the shell off and mash the eggs in a bowl with a fork. It can be easy to mess up, and I only really succeeded half the time. But it's great with just basic seasoning, and sometimes hot sauce. Haven't made it in a while, but I like to eat it on toast, and sometimes over rice. I also made egg salad from time to time. Eggs were cheap, and basically $1 a carton at the discount store. I'm also not a big fan of cereal as I had to eat it a lot growing up, and prefer a warm breakfast without a lot of sugar. No matter how much I told my roommates they could cook their own food if they let me show them how, they just kept complaining that I made food that they weren't allowed to eat. Even though they wanted to eat good food at home, they were completely unwilling to put in any effort. Compared to these guys, I was the only broke person there. They all had the latest gaming consoles and new laptops. One of them even had a car. I had an old N64 and CRT TV that were pity gifts from friends years prior, a GameCube I'd splurged on, and a used laptop I got secondhand. My roommates were near constantly gaming, watching YouTube, and being general couch potatoes when not in class. I think they thought I'd be a pushover at first, but I'm the kind of guy that seems chill till you push me one step too far. And they did this by stealing my game systems and my food. Here's what happened. One evening I made something good for my dinner. Don't remember specifically what it was, but it might have been tilapia fillets. I ate those a lot. Even made them into spicy fish burgers. My roommates all ganged up on me over how their dinners always sucked unless they ate out. Microwave food all around for them on many nights. And they wanted me to finally make something nice for everybody. I told my roommates that if they each kicked in $5, I'd make us all a nice spaghetti dinner the next day. They agreed. My biggest mistake was not collecting the money from them in advance. I went out and got some ground beef, a jar of sauce, a loaf of garlic bread, the noodles, and canned green beans for a side. I whipped up a great dinner. But when I wanted the money from each of them, they laughed at me and refused. They played what they did off as a joke. When I didn't accept that answer, they told me that they were sick of me flaunting my cooking around them and never sharing it. I gave them all the finger and told them I'd never cook for them again. And I stuck to that. They tried several more times, and I always refused. They even offered to pay me again, but still refused to pay me for the first time. So I'm sure they would have just pulled the same stunt again. Money or no money, I had my pride. And I meant it when I said I'd never cook for them again. They started acting like kids whose parents wouldn't feed them around me, and were pretty angry when I called them out on it. I wasn't obligated to be their caretaker. I didn't know what kind of homes these guys came from, but they certainly weren't used to not getting their way. One day I came home from work and found all my food missing from the fridge and cupboards, and none of my roommates were home. I was furious and couldn't even confront them, so I just tried to go play video games to unwind. But my consoles were missing. I lost my mind. I went to see an acquainted neighbor living in one of the apartments down the hall and asked advice from him because he was the one who sold me the GameCube. He had an evil idea and said he'd use his digital camera to record my roommates when I confronted them if I wanted, but only if I paid him $20. I didn't really have a choice but to agree. When my roommates finally came back, they were all smug, until they realized their gaming consoles and laptops were all missing. They flipped out, threatening to kick my ass. But I held my ground and told them I wanted my stuff back, or I'd never tell them where their stuff was. Turns out they bagged up all my food and threw it in the dumpster outside a few hours earlier. Then they hid my game systems and TV somewhere in the building before taking off to a party. I asked them why they did that, and they claimed it was because they had been drinking all day since it was a weekend. Then tried to say it was just a stupid drunken joke, while also telling me I'd gone too far. I laughed and said they were enormous hypocrites and a-holes to say I went too far after what they did. I just got even. One of them looked like he was ready to hit me, and I drew all their attention to the nearby window. That's when they all saw our neighbor outside the window, recording everything with his digital camera. He gave me an okay and took off down the fire escape before my roommates could do anything. I told them that guy just recorded their entire admission. That was bullying, theft, and underage drinking since we were all under 21 at the time. I told them I'd take that recording to the dean if they didn't make things right, because they wouldn't like having that stuff as part of their records. It was well known a couple of girls had been ousted from the college for roommate bullying the previous year. And drinking while underage is also a huge no-no. They all looked like the color had drained from their faces. I told them I wanted my stuff back now and the cost of my food reimbursed. It was their move. They all took off outside as fast as they could. They came back with my game systems and games in a garbage bag, and even retrieved my food from the dumpster and expected me to just take it. But I refused to touch the food because it had been in the garbage for hours, and I would only accept cash. Additionally, they dropped my TV, and it was broken. So I wanted that replaced too. They all hemmed and hawed, but finally asked me what I wanted. I said I wanted a new TV and $60 cash from each of them. They asked why that specific number. I said $50 each to replace my food they tossed, $5 each for the spaghetti dinner that they'd reneged on paying for, and then what remained for having to pay a guy to wait for 2 hours outside our window in the cold to record them. They all got their wallets out and begrudgingly gave me the money. They had all previously bragged about how they had parents and scholarships footing their bills, so they easily had the cash. After getting paid, I told them where to find their stuff I'd hidden, and they stopped bothering me. One of them had a small flat-screen TV in his stuff and just gave it to me to replace what they broke. And then we called things even. But after that they avoided speaking to me if at all possible. Though eventually they all started getting on each other's nerves since I'd ruined their fun. They also never brought alcohol into the apartment again, for fear I'd snitch. And they did try to harass the guy I'd paid to record them. He said he'd take the recording to the dean himself if they bothered him again. So they were SOL to do anything about the situation. When the lease renewal came, 2 of the roommates opted to move out of the building because they and the third guy now hated each other. Yeah, they all hated me. But the 2 that left were especially the worst. But they liked each other just fine. Didn't bother to keep tabs on them once they were out. And the few classes we had together, they kept away from me in. And the one roommate that stayed actually made some improvement as a person and made sure to tell the new guys who moved in not to mess with me at all. One of them was pretty cool though. And he actually liked cooking simple home meals like I did. And he also liked Nintendo and bikes. He became my best friend, and still is to this day. We even still play Mario Kart together when we can, and took up cycling together again once I separated from my ex-wife. He's been my greatest support ever, more so than any family I've ever had. Also, for those wondering where I'd hidden my roommate's stuff, I hid them all in their own suitcases that were already put away in the closet, which would have been one of the last places they'd have looked. They were all so pissed it was all right there the whole time. TLDR. Entitled roommates with more money than me who I wouldn't let mooch off my cooking, took my game systems and threw it and all my food away as a prank. I hid their stuff and recorded them admitting to what they'd done as evidence. They paid me back and never messed with me again.